Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made. And we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Alexi Fallon of Rarible, Liam Martin of Running Remote, and Ben Lay of Selling It Great.
We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and as always, we're looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is always brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
And with us today, we have Keith Burkinshaw. Keith is the owner of a live event production company, KB Creations. He leads his team as executive producer and assists his clients from ideation all the way through execution. Keith and his team have worked with events all over North America with some of the biggest brands in the world celebrating their 7-year anniversary in business. Welcome, Keith. Glad to have you.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Excited. 7 years. That's no small feat, friend. No small feat at all.
Yeah, it always feels like we just got into business and we're still getting our momentum and we're still building things. But then we look back on stuff being 7 years in, you're like, well, kind of not a new business anymore. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, you kind of go.
always, yeah. Always a blessing when clients want to work with us and spend money with us. I mean, you guys get it. It's the same. It's the same deal. Always a blessing. Yeah.
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 I still feel that way, and I started this company in 2006.
Yeah. So you get it way more than I do. Like it's just. It is. It's a cool thing to be able to do. Yeah.
I had a client email me this morning I hadn't heard from since 2015. Like, hey, you still got my logo? Like, actually, I do. Good to hear from you. Here you go.
Right. Cool. It's funny how those things go.
That's pretty neat. Anyway, so before we jump into today's subject, I want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in your industry, like overall, not just your business, and the project you're most proud of so far.
Yeah. So it's a unique. I kind of have a unique background where I was all over the map in college in terms of majors and figuring out what I wanted to do. I went to school. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer. Got into school 2 years down the road. Didn't really like that path. Wasn't really into it. So I was like a hospitality major. I was a psychology major, and I ended up graduating with sports management, which is interesting.
All right.
Yeah. Right. Well-rounded, yes. But the good part of that, I was able to find kind of things I like to do when I got an internship straight out of college working in sports, but like in game presentation. So like if you guys go to a sporting event and you see what's on the scoreboard and the lights and the script and the sponsor reads and all that stuff, kind of just out of the luck of the draw was put into that department to work as an intern and worked in that space for about 3 or 4 years. Worked in some corporate event stuff for a few years after that, and then kind of found my way into corporate events, which is really kind of our niche as a business now. So KBC's been around for about 7 years. I've been working in corporate live event production for about 10 plus. So it was kind of a unique way of getting all those skills together. But yeah, it's been fun. It's a really cool job. It's, not really anything wrong with it, but it's not cubicle based. I get to travel. I get to do different things, meet new people, new clients, new gigs. You guys get how it is. Like when the email comes in and the kickoff happens for a new project, it's kind of like you're building a new brand, even if it's like with the same company you've been working with. You're kind of like hatching this egg as you go, and then you have to kind of let that go once it's done, and then move on to the next project. So it's kind of a unique way to kind of go through things. So it's been a blessing so far. Fun.
Yeah, every project is a new problem to solve, and even within the same brand, that doesn't mean that the campaign or, in your case, the event is same as it was before. Like most of the time, it shouldn't be theoretically. Yeah. If you're doing your job well, you're helping reinvent the client while staying within their parameters anyway.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that kind of answered it, right? Kind of my background and my time.
No, that's perfect.
Cool.
On this episode of Pixel Retentive, we are discussing the unique challenges of niche business ownership and creativity. So basically, I feel like both of us, we could say that I guess I don't own Epic Made, but Carl and you probably have the ability to say that you own fairly niched down businesses. What we do for Epic Made is in a very, very, very specific portion of the advertising and entertainment market. We're targeting tech and entertainment industry. You're probably doing something very similar for the entertainment side, the event entertainment side of things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think and kind of what's unique about us, and I've even like you guys get how it is, because when you're talking at Thanksgiving or you're talking to family members or you're talking to friends that are out of your industry, it's hard to kind of explain at times what you do, the specifics of what you do.
Yeah.
So at times I'll have my family luckily my wife works in the industry, so she gets it, but come to shows and sit on a headset, how we communicate to each other, so you get an understanding of what it is we actually do. But yeah, for sure, I would definitely say our business is niche and even niche for the industry we're in, right? So I think there's events, there's concerts, there's activations, there's trade shows, there's corporate events, which are kind of the space that we work in, which are like sales meetings or product launches or fashion shows. That's kind of our branch. And within that branch, we really try to specialize in just the live event production side of it. So like, we're not touching food and beverage, we're not touching hotel, we're not touching event branding, we're not touching registration. We really try to focus. And that's part of that journey over 7 years is, I think initially when we got into it, probably similar to what you guys had, or a lot of business owners, like, I just want all the business. Give me whatever I can do to keep this thing running. Like let's try to keep as much water out of our boat so we can keep it afloat as long as possible. But I'd probably say over the last 3 years or so, we've really hit our stride in terms of saying no to things that aren't the best fit for what we do, even if that means letting opportunity walk out the door. Because I think you guys get it too. Like, we've been lucky and blessed enough so far that when one opportunity walks out, the space that opens up and the opportunity that opens up, like to kind of focus on other things, something fills that void. You know what I mean? Yeah. So far, you guys get it. But
I love that. I want to make sure nobody missed some really nuggets of wisdom in there, right? Like the first thing in finding your career. So if you're a young creative or just young in general and coming into your career from whatever direction, doesn't necessarily need to be age, but like maybe you're reinventing yourself at some other phase in life, but all the same, just experiencing a lot of different things and like just not all who wander are lost, right? Like you're out there gathering information about yourself essentially, right? Through these experiences. And then you find this lane. And then something else you just said there too was really powerful. Like that we all start the same way. We started a business, however we ended up making that decision, and then you're just taking anything that will pay the bills. Well, that's a trap. It's a trap. Sometimes you have to do it, right? But like at the same time, you've got to go, all right, well, I got to take just enough money that I need. And this would be nice profit, but if it's the wrong type of profit, you start building something you'll hate. You start building something to where, and even if you don't hate it, that might be too much hyperbole. You'll start building something that isn't your best value to a marketplace, right? And once you can niche down, you can say, hey, we serve this industry the best with these things. Now you can really start to charge your value. The bigger businesses will go, I see the value there. And you'll start to align at higher and higher ticket items. Because I didn't do that for a decade at least, right? Like I said, like I was telling you earlier, I started this company in 2006, and I was like, we don't want to miss any opportunities, so we got to do everything for everybody. I mean, I had T-shirt machines in my garage. I was making banners and signs and cutting vinyl and weeding things, and it was absurd. I go to install. Somebody parked their boat in my front yard. I'm like wrapping graphics on it. We don't do any of that shit anymore. Like. But you got to go on that trip sometimes to figure out like these are the right things. And it sort of ties into the subject of today too, just because like there's unique challenges to every part of a business, right? And one of them really is introspection. What is going to work best for you as the founder? Like, because this has to feed you, it has to fill your cup, or you're just going to burn out. And then what things have you surrounded and what team are you trying to build from there to service specific niches and industries?
And it translates to social media as well, where a lot of the time you'll hear stories of people who get trapped in whatever niche went viral for them first.
Oh,
right. where you'll like when you first start out in social media, you're just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then something sticks and you get 300,000 views or whatever, 2 million views or whatever on it. And now you have an influx of all of these people who come expecting that thing. And if that's not the thing you wanted to be known for, if that was just some random idea that you had that happened to hit and happened to resonate, or you could just catch a ride on the algorithm or whatever, then now sorry, some shit in my throat. So now you're kind of caught in this momentum wave where it's hard to turn around, right? You have to like risk pivoting away from the thing that got you popular and all of the people who have kind of come to you knowing that you're going to do this thing, or at least assuming that you're going to continue to do this thing that they got here for, or you continue being trapped in this thing that you lucked into, this thing where that blew up just because it was making you the most money, had the most popularity, whatever, if you're translating it to business.
Yeah.
And now you're stuck doing it out of necessity because it happened to work the best, even though it may not be what's best for you in the long run.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I mean, I think part of that for us was, and me specifically, is I knew the part of what we do that I wanted to do. So when I started and kind of the first couple of years of us doing things, when I was doing parts, when I, say 40% of what I was doing was what I really wanted to do, and the other 60% was to keep that 40% alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when I was working on that other 60%, it was almost kind of harvesting or hurting that 40 in terms of how we were growing, right? So like, for instance, we do a really, really, really good job, at least in my opinion, or at least we're passionate about, like managing presenters and managing speakers and managing talent and stage flow and dynamics and how to set up camera shots and all that stuff, which is kind of a main part of our gig. But we were also doing at the time, like the smaller breakout meetings that happen at meetings. So like the smaller little round tables or executives, right? So when we were doing that stuff and the main room, we couldn't build our connections or the rhythm or the right staffing plan for the space that we wanted to be. So once we started moving out of that, now it's like we're a well-oiled machine, right? So you guys are spot on that. Cause I'm not a big, it's very cliche, very corporate-y bullshit. But I'm not a big believer in the 110% thing where like, you got to give it 110%. I'm more of a big believer in every human has 100%. So if I'm taking 3% out of that 100%, it's not going towards what I want it. Like that's impacting me and us. So, I think you guys are spot on with, kind of putting your energies in the right place, and that's easy to say for all of us, right? When I couldn't say this when I was 1 year in or 6 months in, right? Cause so it is a thing that takes time and has patience, but I think if you know where you're going, you can kind of help you inform the decisions you make when you have the time to do it and the resources.
Yeah. Cause even now we have situations where we'll take a client that's outside of our comfort zone if it makes sense, right? Like, it has to make sense. The money has to be there. The client has to be particularly influential or whatever, or, check one of 3 boxes, right? Where it's just like, hey, this is worth doing this thing that's outside of our comfort zone just for the sake of doing it. I mean, obviously we're not like washing people's cars or anything, right? But like, it's still somewhat in the realm of what we're trying to accomplish. But yeah, like,
we swore off websites years ago, and then like we still one sort of gets in there every year, like and that's sort of what Ross was referring to. We have a client who we really like really great person, easy to communicate with, has a decent budget. We're like, you know what, we'll do your website, right? As all of the suck factors are sort of mitigated, that like the reason why we got out of websites. So there's always a time and a place, I think, but it's really important that you just, like you said earlier, making that space to grow the right stuff, right? Because you'll only have 100%, and anyone that's like, oh, the 110%, that just means you're bad at math. There is no 110%. What you mean is normally you're at 75%, which is probably a good operating speed. You can't run at 100%. Run your car red line for an hour. See what happens. It'll blow the fuck up. Like,
well, no, you guys are right. I mean, I think another part of that too that we've learned is similar to the type of work we wanted to do is we're in a place, luckily right now, and you guys get this as a business owner and business leaders, is when you have an opportunity to work with the people you want to work with and work with the type of people you want to work with in terms of temperament and positivity and attitude and talent and all of that stuff, like that's the other part where I feel like we've been lucky to gravitate towards that stuff too, because I feel like that feeds us back, right? Is a similar way of clearing out some of the business stuff that you don't necessarily want to move towards or be known for, so that you can focus more on your other stuff. Is I think the similar, I can just say, growing up as a Irish dude in Boston, I think my view of things was very pessimistic and kind of not super like optimistic, or like we can manifest things, or like the energy I take in is the energy I take out. But I think as I've progressed as a business owner and worked with more people, that for sure, at least for me in my case, is a big part of why I like to do what I like to do, because we have the opportunity to work with cool people like Carl. We got to connect, and I think, knowing the energy you guys have and the cool shit you guys do on the daily, and being able to chat and have a conversation like this is just another part of the business where it's like you try to bring that positivity and that energy in the same way that you're trying to reinforce your skills with the stuff you want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, luck can be manufactured, right?
Yeah, man.
The idea, like, you do need a degree of luck, right? But in the same way that you need luck to win blackjack, you can count cards, right? Like, you have the ability to say, okay, well, I'm not going to be in these places. I'm going to focus all my energy in these places. And even within that niche, I'm only going to talk to people with these parameters, right? And
Yeah.
you can continue to narrow in the field you're playing in until every single hit is within the bullseye target, right? Like, you're not throwing darts off at the wall. And that's like the reality of it is, I think opportunity comes for everybody at some point, right? It doesn't have to be this, the contrast of the opportunity doesn't have to be so drastic. You don't have to be like completely destitute and then all of a sudden you win the lottery, right? That the contrast doesn't have to be that crazy.
Right.
It could be you're just slowly inching your way toward the bullseye, curving the trajectory toward the bullseye, and what do you do with opportunity as it comes along can either steer you away or toward it, depending on how you choose, right? Like,
yeah, preach. Yeah, I agree. No, I mean, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
You can't win the lottery if you never play, right? Like, even if you have no fucking strategy, if you're just showing up to the game, like, like, you're going to get an opportunity eventually, right? The odds are probably going to go your way. And my brother does a lot of public speaking, and he told me he did this talk at the local high school, right? Like, he runs a restaurant and he does some cool stuff. But he said he saw some guy do this, so he ripped it off from him. But he's like, look, in life, opportunities come by, and sometimes they're once in a lifetime opportunities. And he's like, and you've got to be ready to jump at that opportunity when it shows up. And then he pulls $50 out of his pocket. He's like, who wants $50? And then he stops and holds $50 out. And inevitably, somebody finally clicks for him. They run up to the stage, $50, and he did that at a high school. Like, some kid made $50 at the assembly, and they're like, "Wait, do you need that money back?" He's like, "No, that kid got it. He got the message. He'll never forget."
He's gonna build that into a speaker for you. He's gonna like have $50 on the top of the speaker. It's in his rider. Yeah, his rider has a $50 bill in it. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's true though, right? Like, the idea that you, I kind of hate the idea that, like, you have to play the game to win the game, right? Like, because you could spend your entire life playing the game and never get anywhere near close, right? Like, both of us could have stayed in that 7-year early business mentality, right? And we'd be playing of the game, and we would, to some degree, get opportunities, but like, there is an element of, like, manifest destiny. Like, there's an element of controlling the narrative in your favor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do have to do that, and it sometimes makes you look like a dick to other people, and it sometimes means that you have to sacrifice, one limb to save the other, or whatever. Like, there's a lot of different forms that opportunity might take, and some of it is a balancing act. Like, it's not always a positive thing.
Well, it doesn't seem that way on some level, but like I think we'd still be stuck in that. Like the first decade of this business was massively hard. Like no reasonable person would have continued, except for the thought of me going back to a corporate job was like, there's no way. So I'm either going to die out here on this small business entrepreneur land, or I'm going to figure it out. But the niche, finding a niche, and it feels counterintuitive when you start business. It feels like, oh, well, if I don't serve everybody, I'm going to miss those opportunities. But when you go, we do this thing better than anybody else on the planet, or at least as good, we're at the top of this vertical, then there's something really powerful that happens there. And it is stacking the deck for you, Ross. It's not, yeah, we could have just showed up and been like, oh, we're creatives, like hire us, right? But like, no, we're creatives in this lane doing this thing with this specialty type of animation. We do 2D cell animation for gaming and entertainment brands. And like the more microcosm you get, the less you are replaceable. So, and then tying that back into Aristotle's thing, like, you put yourself in the right place at the right time to get the right opportunities, right? You came into that assembly, you sat in the front row and you were paying attention. Well, guess what? You just got a chance to make $50. There was no way the person in the very back on their phone, sort of paying attention, was going to make that $50. So it's the same kind of consciousness, at least.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I think you guys are right. Yeah.
I heard a quote recently, and I don't know that the person who was relaying the quote to prove their point mentioned who said the quote originally, but I really enjoyed it. And I think it kind of pertains to what we're talking about, is that chaos is just order looked at too closely, right? So like when you're in the thick of it, when you're getting beat around by destiny or whatever, like you feel like it's uncontrollable, but that same moment looked at across a timeline is a story of how you made it, right?
Yes.
So I don't think that most people are good at identifying what is and isn't an opportunity as well, right? Like you said, Carl, like most of the people in that auditorium didn't understand that what they were looking at was an opportunity to make $50.
No. Yeah.
But there are people that do get that, and they're looking at the chaos a little bit farther back than everybody else, right? And so I think that's why that quote really resonated with me.
That really works on the numbers too. Like if you look at insurance agencies, right? If I was just going to insure one person with some life insurance, right? Like that's probably a bad bet for me. But if I can do 10 people, then there's some numbers there that can tell some stories, and there's some consistency, like between this age and these types of lifestyle things. We know that we can bet that like they're going to live to this life. And so that's how all the insurance agencies of any type of insurance product work. It's about zooming out and looking at bigger aggregate bits of information so they can make predictable assumptions on what will and won't happen across all of it. And it's highly accurate because there's so much consistent data. It's pretty wild.
Stocks too, I imagine.
Oh yeah, stocks for sure. So.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, no, I'm down for all this. You guys are speaking my language. I'm sure out of the gate.
So as far as bringing it slightly back to the main topic, I suppose, which is the challenges of like niche businesses specifically, right? Because like we spent a lot of time talking about like why you would niche down. That's basically what this podcast has been about up to this point.
Yep.
Like where you figure out the moment where you're going to start targeting a specific set of people with a specific set of skills and at a specific rate. But like once you do that, there's a ton of pitfalls involved.
There's
a ton of risk involved in that. You want to speak a little bit to that, Keith?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think for me, kind of where we're at now, I don't know if there's I wouldn't consider what we're doing or like the business outlook of our industry a challenge so much as I think a unique thing that once people work with us and get an understanding, specifically like as a part of our team versus our clients, in our business, we aren't producing a product. We aren't producing something that spreads itself out across months. And if a mistake pops up in month 1, we can rectify it in month 3. our actual business, what we're actually in the business of doing, is executing in extremely high pressure situations in extremely specific moments. So, for instance, my job specifically on all of our shows is I'm the guy to say go when the show is going to start, and then produce where the team's going cue to cue, right? So, like, for instance, say we're in a big room, there's 2,000 people. We've been working with a client for 8 months on making sure that their message is being communicated to these 2,000 people. They have spent X amount of dollars on this whole process. Now, if at 9 a.m. I give the team the wrong direction or kind of direct the wrong cue and we miss the open of that entire show, but all of that goodwill, all of that time, all of that money, all of that planning in the future goes right out the door, right? Yeah. So I think for me, like, the biggest challenge of the business that we do, and luckily we've been blessed so far to, I don't even want to say it, I'm going to knock on wood, but like, we've never been fired by a client. We've never been moved on from a client. In terms of a client moving us on, we've changed some things as we talked about previously. But I think the biggest challenge for me specifically too is it's an isolating position in that sense, right? Like, so it's kind of weird because I've seen people when I work for other teams fired for really simple things. Like, you guys have been to corporate meetings before. When a presenter is advancing their slides, they have something in their hand and they're clicking it, right? So they're going from slide 1 to slide 2 to slide 3 to slide 4. That clicker thing is always an interesting process at these events because some clients like to have full control and click it. Some clients click it, we get a light and we click for them. So there's this level of security. Yeah, right. And some, there's interference from other signals in the room, right? So I've seen people get fired for shit as simple as the clicker didn't work, even though they've worked with a client for 4 years and they worked on 8 months of pre-production, right? So, because really, I mean, you guys get this, you're in the same business, like, we're a service-oriented business. We also have to execute on what we're servicing, but there's other companies out there that do what we do, and the client doesn't really owe anything to us unless we have a multi-year contract signed, right? So I think that is always and kind of the challenge for me in that as we grow is like releasing some of that power to other team members, where like that's because I feel at least confident in my ability to knock that out of the park and have teams that support us. But that's definitely a challenge or a uniqueness of like what this specific business is, because like I said, you guys can we could build a beautiful set with amazing lighting and amazing audio, have a great keynote speaker, a cool band. It can be in a sick venue. It can be in an awesome city. We can spend 8 months killing it, super responsive, like on every meeting, we're like doing the best, the client's super happy. And then in a matter of 30 seconds, if the mic doesn't go on when the gentleman or the woman hits the stage, fuck, like that good equity goes out the door. So, there have been times where that's happened for us specifically, where you kind of like, there's a science and you get it, like that whole chaos quote makes perfect sense of like, a rehearsal room or a live event room is controlled chaos, right? But our job, specifically our team's job, is knowing how to orchestrate that in the right way, right? Like, shit's going to happen regardless of how good you plan. It's really for us where our success has been is how we've reacted to it, and how we've like followed up to it, right? Like, I think knowing if you're working in an ER room that someone's going to come in with a bad injury, great. But like, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to x-ray it. I'm going to CAT scan it. I'm going to talk to them about how they're feeling. Like, I'm going to do a whole holistic approach to what we're doing so we know where to go next. And that, for me, at least, has come with experience. So, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of an answer, right? I think of what the challenges of our
I think that basically, like, in summary, like, as you niche down, the stakes get higher, right? Because
I think so, for sure.
Start to, and I can speak to kind of what it's like at Epic Made, on the entire production team, right?
Of course.
The stakes, like, if you're working for like a local, I mean, not to like crap on like a local,
right, brother? I never let.
Just like if you're kind of like in it for everybody, right? If you're just at the surface level of we just started, so we're the pond we're sitting in is the pond we're going for right now.
Yeah.
There's always another fish in the pond, right? And so you can kind of use that pond to train a little bit. right? You can fuck up some client relationships. You can, get in and out of relationships much more easily when you're not niched down, because you're not, and the client's not entering the relationship expecting you to be an expert, right? Or your prices would reflect that, and your niche would reflect that, and your process would reflect that, right?
Yeah.
But when you niche down, when you start saying we do this thing, and it's so singular that when a client comes to you for that one thing, if you can't do that for any reason, like clicker doesn't work because the battery was half used or when you started, and all the rehearsals drained it, right?
Yep.
Like, for no fault of your own, you are being paid to mitigate all of the chaos and all of the what ifs, right?
100%. Yep.
And so it's not that dissimilar to what we're doing, because to a degree our results are a bit more lenient than yours, probably, where like when we make an ad or we make some creative for somebody, the results are still within the realm of gambling, right? Like, they're stacking the deck in a positive direction, but at the end of the day, social media may or may not like it. The target audience may or may not resonate with it, so on and so forth.
Serve to the wrong audience, like that's not even within our workflow. So
No, the marketing team responsible for marketing the content, the creative that we made, didn't identify the right targets. There's a million reasons why something that we make doesn't necessarily resonate at the end goal, right?
Yep.
That being said, what you're talking about would be the equivalent of like us being on the ball from a pre-production standpoint and a production standpoint, and then like something happens, like my voice actor or actress like gets hit by a bus, right? Like, and now all of a sudden I have to go back 4 steps and reschedule auditions and so on and so forth. And now I can't hit the campaign launch date with this piece of creative, right?
Yeah.
And so, which is one of the more finite elements. It's trailer, like video game trailer launch dates. Like, hey, the game is coming out this day. A launch trailer needs to hit this day. There is no wiggle room. We just did a ironically a Venn diagram Venn diagram between our two businesses. We did a animation for a live event for like an internal corporate meeting. Basically, it was for lack of better wording, it was lube before the company decided to tell everybody that they're like their year was going to be harder because like changing all of their sales processes and stuff.
Yeah, here's the candy coating on the outside.
Exactly. Yeah. The pizza party element of corporate America, right? But
good news, everyone's working this weekend.
it was my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding of the situation was that it was like hey, we're going to do this really cool personalized animation thing and get everybody super hype because maybe they're not going to love the next couple things that we say. And so but that being said, it was a finite date. Like, there just wasn't any moving it, right? So if another
Russ, you brought up a good point too, bro. Like just because I know you're cruising, like the point. And no. It's just because I'm gonna forget about it because of my old brain. The point where you said like there's the marketing piece, right? Because I'm sure you guys have been a part of relationships where you've produced a kick-ass piece of content, but the team that was marketing it missed their target. So maybe the client felt like, hey, this ad didn't work last time because of the way that it was produced, but like you guys understand that no, it wasn't the way it was produced, it was the way it was marketed, right? Like I think that's another part of our business too, where like our point of entry with these gigs is different, in 3 different ways generally. Like we either produce the entire thing, right? So that's you, Carl, come to me, you say, hey Keith, we need you guys to produce this event. We work with you on the venue, we hire all the vendors and produce how it looks, we design it, my entire team runs it. Like that's the best way for us, I think, to do our thing. The other is you hire just us to just produce the day of show, that's it, right? Like you hire me, we come in as a hired gun and we call and we direct the show, right? But then I'm dealing with, I have no control of what the set looks like or why it was built the way it was, why the venue was chosen. Hey, this venue makes no sense. The ceiling height's 10 feet, but people are 50 feet off the stage and they can't see the bottom of the screen. So how are they going to read your slide, right? Like, and then the other is like a mix. Like sometimes we're getting hired with partners and then we're working with those partners, but those partners are trying to take our job or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like playing,
you
know what I mean? So it's like, it's playing that politic game. So I think that's a good point that you brought up and inspired this kind of chat of like, it's not always necessarily about what you're doing or how you're executing. You have to be able to like have the emotional intelligence to go through those relationships and challenges of whatever the situation is.
Right.
Whoever you're working with.
You need to have the control as well, right? Like, like what you're talking about is a variance in the amount of parameters you can control, right? Like if we're working directly with the marketing team, then we can identify who we think that this thing is for, right? If we're working directly with the event planners, then we know, like I had to get specs from the guys planning the event, right? Of like, hey,
of course.
And they were weird fucking specs too. They were, it was like, this needs to be this codec specifically with like 60 frames per second as opposed to like 30, which is more significantly more common for animation.
Yeah.
And so we had to do a whole lot of weird hoop jumping just to make sure that they didn't look bad, right?
Should have called me, dude. Should have called me.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have any control.
Well, next time.
Hey, for sure. Next time, sure. I think it was in Boston too. We should have called.
Yeah, let me know. No, but Ross, you're right, bro. I think for me, like the other part of the challenges I faced initially, because really the first couple of years were like me having the skills from the previous full-time gigs I had, taking that and kind of figuring it out as I went on my own. I would say over the last couple of years, especially like a lot of businesses, but especially since COVID, because naturally our industry just went from something to nothing overnight. There weren't events happening, right?
That was a fun time.
Figured it out, man. It was a blessing and a curse at the same time. You know what I mean? But I think the mental part of the game for me was a challenge at times, which I've worked heavily on in terms of like self-perception, perception on challenges and how to deal with those challenges, urgency levels, like all of that stuff. Because I would say, like, and I know our team operates this way too, like the mental side of running businesses and running businesses in an industry that's not like it's, if it's niche, like there aren't our events happening every single day with clients that need one of us every single day. Trusting the process, trusting your skills, trusting your intention, trusting your thought process, perceiving your way in the way, like you guys already said it, but like, I feel like the way that we look at ourselves and our business and the way that we want to do things and how the intention and the positivity behind it has helped inform all the positivity that's come back and the gigs that have come back and the type of clients we've attracted and the type of partners we've attracted and all that stuff. So the mental game for us has been big too, in terms of me specifically getting over some of those challenges and hurdles initially of like, hey, those guys are doing that event. How come they're doing that event and I'm not? Like, versus now it's like, wow, that's pretty badass. Look at the things they're doing. How can we do what they're doing, or what are they doing that's better than us? Or wow, that's a cool set design. We can take that and repivot it. So I think that's a similar deal, right? It's like the getting to the right business piece, figuring out what you want to do, working with the right people, but then also your mindset has to be like the third tier of that triangle, so to speak, of, for me at least. Yeah. I know if I go into a room, I'm like, fuck these people and I don't want to be here and I don't want to do this and I can do his job, I can do her job. Like that energy going into a meeting or a room, I come out feeling way different than like, hey, this is cool. Like I'm going into a meeting and I get to chat with cool people, or I'm on a podcast with you guys, I get to chat with cool people. Like going in and having that kind of ability to, I like to call it emotional intelligence, at least for me, is like that's grown heavily over the last couple of years of, I think that's a big part of it too, is really your mindset and your perception of things. It helps for me.
It does. That's absolutely true. Yeah. If you go into something with a negative perspective out the gate, like you might as well not even be there. Like and everyone else can feel that vibe, and they definitely don't want to work with you again in the future. So.
No. Well, you guys get it too, dude. It's like, it's why, if someone has the choice, right? would they want to work with you if your energy and that vibe is that way? Like, it's not like I don't work at an agency anymore. I don't go home and not have to worry about food coming on the table because my check's coming next week. It's like every single little opportunity is a little tiny moment to, seal that positive interaction or give the good energy. Like one of my favorite quotes that was just at a meeting the other day is, what people say about you when you're not in the room is like really where your business is at. Basically, that's like me ad-libbing, right? But I truly try to have all of our team use that as their like inspiration for all of our interactions, whether it's partners or clients or let's hop on a podcast and chat together or whatever. Carl, let's have a quick call and noodle on what you guys are doing versus what we're doing, like all that stuff. I think it's super important. You know what I mean?
It's massive.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I realized, I guess so about 2 years ago, I decided my goal now to grow Epic Made was to become an absolute guru at marketing Epic Made. And, so we tried stuff like paid ads. We tried like every kind of thing you could think of. And what I really realized was it's like, we just got to be in front of the right people at the right time. And the only way to do that is just to build relationships. Nobody on the level we're at saw an ad on a thing, was like, oh, we should hire this team to do our $200,000 campaign. That doesn't happen, right? They're only picking up people that like, hey, my guy so-and-so said you got to try this guy out because their team's amazing. They did this amazing thing for us. And it is all relationship building. Like at this level of the game, it's really just about who you know, because everyone at a certain tier can do the thing, right? So it's like, do they like working with you and who's recommending you, right? So.
And also, Keith, I think you said something a little while back, where you said when the client has a choice, and I think that's a big difference between being cemented in a niche and being in the initial I just started a business pond, because a lot of your clientele when you're in that initial pond doesn't really have a choice. Like they're coming to you because you're like their only option. Right. And that's really the only way that you get business early on, is because you happen to be in a place and people within your immediate semicircle, like they just happen to need the thing that you're willing to do. Right.
Yeah.
But when you get deep into like, hey, this is what we're going to be known for on a larger national scale, then you get into like what Carl was saying. At that point, there's 100 other agencies that can do the thing, right? Like there's only so many ways you can differentiate yourself when you get down to it. And so there's, you really have to have the personability and the communication side of things. You really have to have like a very clear idea of what you bring to the table that some of those other businesses don't, even if that's as small as like our process like is using this app versus the other app, or our process involves the client in these decisions versus these other versus other agencies who don't involve the client in these decisions, or vice versa. Maybe you don't. Maybe the sell is that you don't involve the client and you just kind of like take over for them and make it easier that way.
I think there's two different dichotomies. There's some things happening in there, right? So like on the low level, people have less choices because they don't know that many people and they don't have the resources to hire. The pool's pretty small, right? Because people that know their value or are just in general more valuable, they're maybe not able to afford them in that local small business marketplace, right? Like, but on the higher tier, when you start to get to the space where it's like, there's only 4 or 5 other agencies that do what you do specifically for your niche. So like, I think that there's something in there too, where it's like, you're not that replaceable. However, there are still some other people that can do what you do. So it really does at the end just boil down entirely to the relationships and that people want to work with you. Because the niching puts you in the spot where it's like, there's a lot less competition, but there's no singularity where it's like if you're in a space where literally no one does what you do in the whole world, like, maybe you can be an asshole then, right? But like, still, no one wants to work with you. Like, who wants to live that life? So,
see, it's funny. It's funny you say that because it's sort of in contradiction to what Keith said, and I have a little bit of I have a small I guess it's a metaphor anecdote where like we actually just got a client because obviously Epic Made's ethos is significantly more sociable, friendly, fun, et cetera, right? So like we're not trying to be assholes to anybody. We just don't operate that way. But it's funny that you mentioned that, like, that you theoretically could be an asshole, because we actually got a client who was comparing our work with other animators' work for a specific like children's book launch animation, and we were almost identical from a price point and skill set standpoint, right? Like she only looked at people who could do the thing, and she had like 2 or 3 other agencies. And the reason we got the job is because I didn't mansplain to her what animation was verbatim. I didn't mansplain what the process was like and what animation was and so on and so forth. And I gave the end client, because we were working with the agent of the end client, I gave the end client better language to digest of like what our process was like, right? As opposed to, you need to provide us this stuff, and there's, you have this many revisions, that's it, and so on and so forth. Like, I built in extra money into the contract because the agent said, hey, this end client is the artist of a children's book. They're a little timid. They're typical artist material. They're a little timid. They're a little shy. They are very meticulous about their own artwork. They're very passionate about it, and they're going to go back and forth a bunch. Like, they're gonna have a million revisions for your stuff. And so I built in like a don't worry about all of the revisions contingency fund, and like the extra money we put into the contract ultimately got us the job because of the language used, right? Like, hey, we understand the assignment, we understand who we're dealing with, and we're ready and willing to work with you. And it's been an amazing relationship ever since, right?
That's great, man. Yeah, you stepped into their headspace.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good thing. Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part.
You guys get it too. I think that comes with experience, right, Russ? I mean, I think it's, no one comes out of the gate and is like, you don't know things till you know them. You know what I mean? And you don't know what you don't know till you don't know it. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that's a big part of being our piece. And we're all in a creative space, or clients trusting us space. So I think there's a level of trust that comes with you clearly explaining and being vulnerable of like, hey, we're not experts here, but we can certainly help you get to the right people or whatever, right? I think stepping in their headspace on either side is key. It's a good win for you guys. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we are coming up on time. So we are going to have to wrap soon. And I think that honestly, we're in a pretty good spot to do so. I think we've provided some really valuable information for the podcast episode, and I think it's been great meeting you as well. So I'm definitely feeling good about the episode content. But
awesome.
We do have one last question for you, Keith, and that is something that we ask all of our guests toward the end of the podcast. Is there any like sort of one or thing in your career, a mentor, valuable resource, favorite client that you'd like to shout out for the benefit of the audience, for them to either look up or research into within the scope of the conversation?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a look up resource thing, but it's a personal learning thing, which I know if I knew back when I know it now, would be super helpful. I think coming up, being a younger guy, early 20s, I had a manager. Her name was Suzanne DeGeorge, and she was tough on me, super tough. Like really made me cross all my T's, dot all my I's, even if I think I didn't need them or the people aren't going to see those, I don't need to do it. She really, really was on me. And at the time, being younger and taking it as I like to call myself, and people that know me will get this. When I was younger, I was a super raw nerve in the industry, right? Like I think some of the maybe the talent or like some of the charisma or whatever, some of that stuff was floating around. But I thought I was way up here, and I was a super raw nerd and really didn't know what I don't know, right? Which I love saying that. But looking back on it, yeah, right. Like looking back on it, a year, 2 year, and now like multiple years removed. I feel like a big part of my attention to detail and a big part of my in our rooms, if you walk in and there's a little light that's up, or like you guys have seen drape and like stuff like that, scenic before. If a piece of scenic is 2 inches off to the left, Like all that little stuff, I really feel like came from me having to do it. Otherwise, I was going to get my ass kicked from my boss at the time. So the part of that interaction that I would pass on to other people is yes, you're young, you're super talented, you're energetic, you know what you want to do, you're kind of differentiator from other people. But if people are trying to do things a certain way, like even if it's negative or if it's giving you a hard time or making you work harder or longer,
especially if it's meticulous.
Yeah, man, take what you can take out of that. You know what I mean? With a grain of salt and have good perspective on it. Because for me, I feel like some of those things where at the time I was like, screw these people, or they're not putting me in the right position. No, she really was trying to put me in the right position by helping me do my job better. So yeah, I think just try it. It's hard nowadays, especially I work with a lot of young people in my industry where we bring them in to kind of work in our system and help be a part of the gigs and smaller roles. Yep. It's hard nowadays to let ego out the door and really be vulnerable and just open to being taught and learning and taking it in the right way. So try to really be cognizant of perspective and have a good perspective on those things. For me, it would have helped much better. I'm glad that I finally got there. At least that's my vote. But Suzanne, for sure, I think she's still floating. I used to work for the Worcester Sharks, which was a minor league hockey team out in Worcester, Mass. I think she's still floating around out there doing marketing stuff for newspapers or something. But she was amazing, and she was a great manager and really kept me on my toes. And at the time, I didn't have the right perception on it, but for now, I definitely do. And that was, I don't know, maybe 10 plus years ago, 15 years ago. So
I love it.
But yeah, shout out to Suzanne. Suzanne, I'll hit you up on LinkedIn if we haven't chatted in a while. Shout out.
Suzanne. Yeah, look, man, we just all have to never stop wanting to learn. Never think you know everything, right? And just keep learning and having an open mind. And, we're in an industry that's so evolving and the technology's evolving and all the stuff around us. So we never know everything. You have to love learning and love growing. So cool.
True that.
Well, and a big thank you to John O'Keefe of Cubic Labs, who puts on Boston Blockchain Week every year, which is where you and I met. And, I know that's a little event for you, but it's still a great one. And it was really just beautiful. And you turn this like random breezeway between two buildings into like a real space that really feels like something cool, man. So, hey, yeah, I love that.
And not little. We don't want to put that out into the ethos. Definitely not a little event.
It's growing.
It's growing, but we're blessed. I don't care if the event is in a phone booth. We're blessed that any client trusts us with their space.
100%. It's a great event. I've been there, I've every year now. I'll be coming there. So it's a
you speaker, bro. We always love you speaking there. Great speaker.
Thank you.
Love it. Cool. All right, fellas. We'll wishing you guys the best too. Obviously, we'll find ways as partners to work together and chat. But I'll keep being a fan of the podcast and thank you guys for your time and wishing you and Epic Made all the success that you guys deserve. So keep rocking.
Hell yeah. We were talking with Keith Burkinshaw, owner of KB Creations. You can check out their website at kbcreationsllc.com. And if listeners want to follow up with you directly, Keith, should they go to LinkedIn?
Yeah, you know what? I am bad at the whole social media corporate game because, frankly, it's just not my thing. Hit me up on Instagram's our best spot. So at KB Creations LLC is the best spot for like our most up to date work. You can hit me up. My cell and my email are on there. Always happy to chat. Always happy to lend a hand. So yeah, man, Instagram probably the best.
Awesome. All right, Pete. Thanks so much for being on the show. Take it easy.
Yeah, rock and roll. See ya.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.